Good evening, everyone. I welcome all the members to our 180 Knowledge Series webinar on SEBI compliance and operations, demystifying investment advisory, research analyst, and PMS category. So today we have with us our guest speaker, Mr. Shardul Shah, Director, Secmark Consultancy Limited, who will be, guiding us, running through the compliance and operations side of AI, RA, and PMS categories. I also welcome our chairman, Mr. Arjun Shah, and request him for introductory remark. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shidhar. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending this very interesting webinar. So, I believe there is the reason why we chose this subject of investment advisory, research analyst, and PMS because we found it to be a little bit of a gray area as to what constitutes these categories, what can you do in these, what are the compliances for it, and what license do I require? Do I require IA? Do I require RA, IA, or PMS, or do I need a license? Right? If I'm doing something as basic, that we've been doing since years together, is that a client calls up in the morning and says, "Kya lagta hai acha? Kya lagta hai Bajaj? What's worth buying?" And we very innocently answer them. So is that allowed? Based on the questionnaire that we floated, these are the questions that we got that people want to know that if I want to become an investment analyst, then what are my compliances? What's the network criteria? Can I give buy and sell calls to my clients? Because that is what everyone does. So do I need to be registered? So for that, we approached Secmark, and Shardul was kind enough to, give us a very nice detailed presentation that is prepared for us today. So over to you, Shardul. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Arjun, for this lovely introduction. Good evening to all. Thank you, ANMI, for this opportunity where I can elaborately describe what are the things it being coming by the SEBI with regard to the compliance of IA, RA, and PMS. Before we proceed on the formal presentation, I like to give a brief discussion about this capital market, how the market is being evolved, and how this particular license set came into the picture. Long back, more than 100, 150 years, BAC is there. The trading platform is there where the people are being buying and selling the securities. IPO is becoming primary and secondary market is there. But over the period of time, it is being realized by the people that management of wealth is one of the critical aspect where it is necessary for the player, that is the registered intermediary like us, that is a broker and a DP, that they should come into the footprint of this area and expand their business and expand their wings. 90s, late 90s, the PMS regulations that came into the picture. 2013, investment advisory regulation came into the picture. 2014, research regulation came into the picture. When both these regulations, that is the research and the investment advisory came, at that time, the regulation, the size of the regulation itself was hardly 10 or 13 pages. And it has a very limited purview. It has so many ambiguity. And today we are in 2025. The regulator had come with so many clarity. FAQs are there, master circulars are there in form of a compilation of the compliances and many other things that is being floated into the website. So that now the players are having multiple options available, which to choose to manage the wealth of my client. Before we proceed, I just want to further explain that each category and each scenario is different for each and every member. For a broker who are into retail broking and having ultra HNI client may have a different scenario and they may go for some license, but same is the not case with the other trading member because they might be having different nature of client and they may have to go with some other license. So let us elaborately understand what is the compliance requirement, and based on that, we will just take up which license that we can take it up as a registered intermediary. Arjun, you can see my screen, correct?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can see.
The coverage of today's presentation is all three regulations, that is the SEBI IA regulation, SEBI Research Analyst regulation, SEBI Portfolio Managers regulation, all three master circulars issued by the SEBI on the all three regulations, that is IA, RA and PMS, and a circular issued by the SEBI on advertisement for IA and RA, and guidelines issued by the IA by the SEBI on IA and RA, that is in January 25. We had also covered few points on the recent amendment and clarity issued by the regulator in July 2025 on certain client level segregation. Let us understand what are the comparison among the licenses. When we start with a business, who can become a particular entity? That is an individual can become an investment advisor. Yes, an individual can become a research analysis. But whether an individual can become PMS? No. A PMS can be applied by either a corporate, that is a company, or an LLP. An individual or HUF cannot become a portfolio manager. Now, second such criteria is that net worth. Initially, when the regulation came into the picture for IA and RA, there was a net worth requirement of 25 and 50 lakh rupees, which is being abolished with effect from 16th of December 2024. And instead of net worth, the deposit-based criteria is being defined by the regulator. However, with regard to the PMS license, there is a requirement to have a net worth, and that is also substantial value, that is a 5 crores. So here we have to further elaborate that net worth is net worth. So an entity, you are already a broker and DP, so they're supposed to have a net worth of 5 crore, and they also want to be a portfolio manager. Then they should have a minimum net worth of 10 crore. And out of that, the what is the net worth required by an existing license, that is a broking DP, is 5 crore need to be reduced. And what is the net worth, that is the balance net worth available, that should be minimum 5 crore to avail or to be eligible to be a portfolio manager. So this is the two second criteria wherein the compliance of SEBI is come into the picture. Now, third such criteria is the deposit. IA and research both has a different slab wherein the number of clients are there. Based on that, the deposit need to be submitted to the BSE Limited. That is, we have to make sure that that submitted means not the physical deposit need to be submitted to the authority, but a lien to be marked in favor of BSE Limited while you are enrolling for this particular license. Now, how the value would be determined? If you have a 100 less than 150 client, the value of deposit would be 1 lakh. If you have a 150 to 300 client, the value of deposit would be 2 lakh. If you have a 300 to 1000 client, the value of deposit would be 5 lakh. And if you are having more than 1000 customer, the value of deposit would be 10 lakh rupees. The upper case is the 10 lakh rupees. The deposit that we have to open with the nationalized bank or a scheduled bank, and on that you have to mark a lien in favor of the BSE Limited. You don't have to submit this deposit to the authority. Alternatively, recently the regulator had also given an option to put a pledge of mutual fund, that is a liquid mutual fund or overnight mutual fund unit, instead of marking a lien on the fixed deposit receipts. With regard to the KYC, yeah, all the three licenses have a different style of working. So where the research analysis have a very limited number of compliance, because the non-paying pays client, there is no such requirement to have a KYC. For investment advisory, yes, there is a requirement to have a KYC. And for the portfolio manager, yes, KYC requirement is always being there. With regard to the agreement with the customer for IA and PMS, yes, agreement requirement is mandatory. No such requirement with regard to the research license. Why am I just elaborating, describing this particular terminology? While your business, what is your nature of client, what is your methodology, what is your capability, and what is your skill set? Based on that, you will take a call, okay, whether a particular license, that is a IA or research, is suitable to your business operation, or whether a particular PMS license would be suitable to you. Next parameter is the qualified staff. Now, with regard to the IAN research, there are principal officer requirement and two parameters are there. One is the education qualification and second is the NISM certification. However, with regard to the PMS, there are three criteria categorization is there. Sorry, eligibility criteria is there. Education, certification, and experience. Experience into the capital market and dealing in security and into the management of the fund and security of the customer for a period of 5 years is one of the mandatory and critical requirement to avail the PMS license. With regard to the reporting, IANRA have a limited number of reporting, half yearly submission and annual report submission are the two major criteria to be fulfilled by the IANRA. However, with regard to the PMS license, there are multiple requirements are there like monthly submission to APMI, monthly submission to SEBI, quarterly submission to the customer, half yearly network certificate submission, annual audit report submission, annual form level certification, customer client performance reporting, and so on. So there are multiple requirements are there with regard to the PMS license. Ticket size. With regard to the client's ticket size, there is no such ticket size prescribed with regard to the IANRA. Any value of the asset under advisory could be managed by the investment advisor. No such limit with regard to the research also. However, with regard to the portfolio management, minimum value of the fund or the security should be 50 lakhs. That is one of the predefined criteria by the SEBI regulation. Few more comparisons are there on the compliances. One of the critical one here, you will definitely will derive which license to opt for. Mode of fees based on which you can charge to the customer. Under IA license, you can charge either fixed mode or you can charge on variable basis. However, under research, only fixed mode is the mode that is you can charge to the customer. With regard to the PMS, more liberty, more flexibility. You can charge fixed fees, you can charge variable fees, you can charge a blend of both the fees, fixed plus variable, both. Whether limit on the fees? Yes. In IA and RA, both the places, limits are there with regard to the fees to be charged from the customer. For IA, if you are charging fixed fees, you have to make sure that the total fees in a year is not exceeding rupees 1,51,000 per annum per client family. If you are charging variable fees, you have to make sure that your total fees is not exceeding 2.5% of the asset under advisory. However, under research, there is more stringent restrictions are there. Earlier, it was not there. The restriction has been come recently where the fees is being capped to rupees 1,51,000 per annum per client family. No such limit with regard to the PMS. With regard to the payment methodology, yes, in case of IA, you can take advance fees for a period of 2 quarters maximum. For research, you can take the fees 1 quarter in advance, and in PMS, you are not supposed to take any fees in advance from the customer. This is one of the critical thing, free trial. You will see that many times when we launch a particular product or the software or services, that initially we offer this to free of cost to our customer. However, that is not the case with regard to the IA. For investment advisory, free trial is not permitted. You have to charge a fees to the customer for availing the investment advisory services. However, with regard to the research, yes, free subscription is permitted, free trial is also being permitted. Same is the case with the PMS, as no such provision being available in the SEBI regulation. Yes, these two critical operations are there, which is not being the within the purview of INRA, that is the custodian activity and fund accounting, which is being the one of the critical and complex operation with regard to the PMS license. Distribution services. Yes, there is an regulated distribution of charges. Many of us are the stockbrokers and we are being the ARN holder and doing the mutual fund distribution. Now, SEBI, when they come up with this amendment into the IA and RA regulation, they have put certain restrictions on the distribution services. If an entity they are into investment advisory or research services, they are not being supposed to have a common client to whom they are being giving distribution of the mutual fund units. SEBI is thinking that for the same services, the investment advisor or the broker or that mutual fund distributor are taking fees from the customer for both the services. And that is why this restriction is being kept. So that they have clearly said that there should be a complete segregation of client at group level. If an entity is having X Limited as a broker and Y Limited as a research or an investment services, still at group level, they have to make sure that the customer are being adequately segregated and uh, fees is being charged from the customer are not being provided the distribution services. With regard to the IA, this restriction is still there. However, with regard to the research services, recently a clarification came in form of an FAQ by the SEBI of July 25, wherein an exemption is given if a research entity is providing research on direct equity, that is the securities, stocks, and that particular entity is doing a distribution of mutual fund and they are not into research of mutual fund units, then they are permitted that to a single customer they can provide both the services. With regard to the PMS, there is no such restrictions or no such provision is available. So as of now, both the things is permitted. Only thing is that you have to make sure that both the corpus are separate. The distribution corpus and the PMS corpus should be separate thing so that the broker can enjoy the distribution commission as well as the PMS services. Compliance outsourcing. There is a recent amendment in the IA and RA regulation wherein the complete outsourcing of compliance is permitted, including the compliance officer can also be an outside agency like professional like chartered accountant, company secretary or cost accountants. However, no such flexibility is available with regard to the PMS regulation. So the PMS should have an in-house compliance officer who should be an employee of the PMS. Few more comparisons are there. Now, NISM series. With regard to the IA, minimum one person should have NISM certification of 10A and 10B. And on expiration, the renewal should be done for NISM series 10C. For RA, the series 15 should be clear. And for PMS, series 21 should be 21A should be clear. With regard to the distribution network for that particular IA, RA or PMS services, there is no regularized distribution structure with regard to the IA and RA. However, for the PMS, there is a regularized structure is there for the distributor. The distributor should be empowered with the APMI, an authority, as well as they have to have an NISM certification for the distribution purpose. And there are certain disclosure norms that should be adopted by the portfolio manager. Operations. Now, IA and RA has a limited amount and quantum of the operations. However, PMS license has a more number and more complex nature of operations like KYC, fund accounting, security management, allocation, pooling, reporting to the regulator, reporting to the customer, and many more. Part-time concept. Yes, recently there is an amendment into the regulation and IA and RA may have a part-time role where they are being working with some entity and they can take up the role of part-time investment advisor or part-time research analyst. However, no such concept is there for the portfolio manager. Risk profiling. The risk profiling with regard to the customer that are being onboarded to whom we generally offer model portfolio or the baskets. Yes, IA and PMS, both the regulation provide for risk profiling of the customer. However, there is no such provision under research regulation to have a risk profiling of the customer. Let us go through the minimum compliance requirement under all these three regulations so that we'll get an clarity what is suitable for your business, or which are the new verticals that you can start up with regard to the wealth management. For IA, principal officer requirement is there, and there are two eligibility criteria for a person to be a principal officer. One, the education qualification, that the person should be graduate. Second, the certification, that is the NISM series 10A and 10B should be cleared by the person before the document is being applied to the authority. Second such requirement is the deposit. The deposit requirement is will being fulfilled the moment in principle approval is being given by the regulator, that is the BSE and the SEBI. As we defined that there are some slabs are there that minimum 1 lakh rupees deposit can be placed in favor of the BSE Limited, or instead of the FDR, the liquid mutual fund or overnight mutual fund unit can also be placed in favor of the IASB or the BSE Limited. IA compliance with regard to the fees. IA are permitted to take the variable fees. There is a cap. Yes, that 2.5% of the asset under advisory per annum per customer across all services. Now, when we talk about 2.5% of the asset under advisory, we have to make sure that that value is, say, take an example, asset under advisory is rupees 1 crore. The total cap on the fees would be 2,50,000 as per this regulation. However, recently amendment is there. Earlier, when the wealth managers are maintaining the family business offices, wherein the asset under advisory is not restricting to the security or the mutual fund, but also covers the real estate and the investment into unlisted and few other entities as well. However, SEBI, while making this amendment, they have very much clearly mentioned in the regulation that asset under advisory will not cover non-security or unstructured product. They will cover and consider the value which is being the value of the security as defined under section 2H of the SICRA. If IA is opting for fixed model of charging fees to the customer, they have to make sure that the upper cap, that is the maximum fees that they can take from one customer or family of a customer, is not exceeding rupees 1,51,000 per annum. Here, we need to understand that what is the definition of family of a customer. Family of the customer include dependent spouse, dependent parent, dependent children. Now, they would intentionally mention the word dependent. If a family of a customer is depend on that particular customer, then only this addition, the clubbing would be done. In case a declaration is being submitted by the customer that my spouse, that is my wife, she is and not financially depend on me, in that case, IA are permitted to charge another 1,51,000 from the spouse of that customer, because that spouse is not depend on the customer. So minor trick is being there in the regulation. So we have to make sure that we adhere to the regulation. Next provision with regard to the fees is that fees should be charged on an annual basis. That is, you can modify the methodology, that is fixed to variable, variable to fixed. But you have to make sure that that minimum period of 12 months is being elapsed to do necessary changes. The IA can take maximum 2 quarters fees in advance from a customer. In case there is a premature termination of investment advisory agreement, maximum 1 quarter fees can be retained by the IA, and rest all fees, that is might be 1 quarter or a part of a quarter, fees should be refunded to the customer. Now, one more liberty or an exemption is given under the regulation is an AI, that is an accredited investor. Under the AI, the IA are permitted to charge X number of fees. There is no fees cap or restriction is there, and that fees will be determined based on the bilateral agreement between the AI customer and the investment advisor. Now, what is AI? Accredited investor are ultra HNI customer who has a liquid net worth beyond a prescribed limit and income of a particular prescribed limit as prescribed by the regulator periodically, and they have to apply to the MII like CAMS and CVL, and have to take that AI certificate, and that certificate is to be submitted to AI investment advisor, so that based on that the investment advisor can have an agreement with AI customer, and the fees can be determined based on the performance or any such arrangement between the both the party. The regulation of IA will not apply over in that particular case. KYC compliance. We being broker and DP, we know that so many things are being covered into KYC. So for you, it is a very standard and routine thing like know your customer account opening form, KRA compliance, CKYC compliance, an agreement with the customer and the investment advisor. Risk profiling and risk assessment should be done, so that you have to categorize your customer in a way that a particular nature of customer will get advice where the risk appetite of that particular customer is suiting to his need. We have to make sure that all such risk profiling are being mentioned in the client master, that is the client register, and based on that the advice is being given to that respective customer. Recently, there is an amendment and some most important terms and conditions, MITC, an additional disclosure is there which need to be done with the customer. You have to take a consent on that MITC, and you need to IA need to disclose that MITC on their website and other such communication with the customer. Record keeping. Now, this is one of the critical thing that we need to understand. First part is with regard to the KYC record, that is account opening form, KRA, KYC and agreement. Third is about suitability assessment. The document need to maintain to understand which advice is suiting to a particular customer or the bunch of customer. So for that, you need to define and categorize customer into 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 category. And based on that, the advice need to be broadcasted to the respective customer. Now, what IA, that is the investment advisor, is giving as an investment advice, that advice should also be recorded and preserved, based on which this investment advice is being provided. That rationale should also be retained by the investment advisor, and that should be duly signed and dated. So take an example. Today on 4th of September, X Limited, an investment advisor, is giving an advice to their 5 customer on a particular script. So on the 4th of September, the investment advisor, Mr. A will put his comment why 1, 2, 3 script need to be bought, why certain script need to be exited, and why a particular buy, hold or sell recommendation is being suggested to a particular customer, reason along with the date and the signature. This record need to be preserved for a minimum period of 5 years. Further to this, there is a register of customer should also be prepared and maintained. As a broker and DP, we generally maintain a client master into our back office application. Similarly, similar such register of clients should also be maintained. There are specific purpose for this particular register that will come in a later slide, where the segregation, the group level segregation should be maintained and followed. And for that purpose, this register of client is very much important. One more requirement for record keeping is the record of communication over email, over telephonic conversation, or any such mode of communication where the communication is there between the investment advisor and the customer. That all record should be preserved and maintained for a minimum period of 5 years. Code of conduct. There are certain standard code of conduct that is being given under the schedule 3rd of the IA regulation, which need to be adhered by the IA. That honesty and fairness should be there in their dealing. Diligence should be adhered while conducting any research and conducting before giving any investment advisory. The IA should have a capability and deploy capable resources for conducting research, for risk profiling of customer, for giving suitable advice to the customer. Adequate level of disclosure should be given to the customer at each point of time. At first stage, while onboarding the customer, during the course of giving an investment advice, so that the customer will take an informed decision on a particular advice given by the investment advisor. The fair and reasonableness with regard to the charging is also important. Either you are charging fixed fees or variable fees, you have to make sure that you are fair and reasonable. There should not be any kind of conflict of interest with regard to the investment advice given by an investment advisor. When an investment advisor giving a buy recommendation for an X limited script, we have to make sure that he do not have any kind of short position on that particular security. So there should be a very fairness and a transparent dealing should be there. If any such position is there because of one or other reason, that person should have adequate level of disclosure and facts should be communicated to the customer before or during the course of supplying that particular investment advice. The compliance under the regulation, guidelines, circulars should be adhered, and it is the responsibility of the senior management that they deploy capable and skilled human resource team who are being maintaining the compliance and adhere to the regulation. The more compliance with regard to the website for an investment advisor, a functional website should be there, and it should have certain number of prescribed disclosure norms like name of the investment advisor, registration detail, contact detail, complaint status. There are some recent amendments are there in the disclosure where earlier there was no such requirement of complaint status or the investment chartered or the even the compliance status with regard to the internal audit that the investment advisory is being having on an annual basis. So all that fact need to be hosted on the website of the investment advisor, and the investors while visiting to the website should know what is the level of compliance the IA is being having, and based on that he will select an IA whether to go ahead with this IA or not. And that is the core reason why the SEBI are asking IA to have all these facts to be hosted on their website. If an IA has a mobile app, then all such disclosure things should be disclosed in the mobile app as well. While having communication with the customer, either online or offline, online like email, WhatsApp, or other communication, or offline through an letter or brochures or pamphlet, IA has to make sure that all these relevant details are being disclosed on their communication. There are some stringent norms are being prescribed by the SEBI for the investment advisor and research analyst both. Here I had compiled both the compliance requirement of I and RA together because most things are on the same line except one or two minor changes are there. Advertisement shall be in form of any communication, either it is a pamphlet, physical form, circular, physical, email, brochures, notice, research report, any such thing would be there. That will be termed as an advertisement. Prior approval from the authority is mandatory requirement before issue of any kind of advertisement. There are certain disclosure norms are there that should be adhered by issuing any advertisement. Like standard warning should be there. It should have a standard that 20 words of the SEBI standard font size should be there, and their size should not be less than 10, and at least 10 second that if that visual effect is there, then 10 second that warning statutory standard warning should be written on the screen. So all that stuff should be added while putting or issuing any kind of advertisement. There are certain prohibitions are there, like false or misleading, bias or descriptive statement are not being permitted. Any kind of misleading or deceptive testimonial is also not being permitted. Extensive use of technical or legal terminology or a complex language, like using financial jargons, technology, fintech words in a way that the investor may not be. The layman, the investor is being assumed as a layman, and they are not an expert of technology, they are not an expert of legal subject, they are not an expert of financial subject. They are laymen. They understand basic things. So while issuing any such advertisement, we have to make sure that IA or RA are not using any technical legal terminology or complex languages. As we know that any of the SEBI registered intermediary are not permitted to give any kind of promise or guarantee on the returns. For INRA, reference to past performance is prohibited. So this is not a permitted act. So in case a particular entity, here I'm just elaborating that if a particular entity want to disclose to their customer while pitching their product that के in past हमने इतना इतना performance दिया हुआ है. So for that you have to go for a license like portfolio management or AIF or any such license where such reference to past performance is permitted. SEBI logo is not being permitted to be disclosed on any of the advertisement of the IA or RA. Compliance officer requirement. Yes, it is mandatory for IA or RA both that an appointment of compliance officer should be there. An in-house employee can be a compliance officer, or a professional like chartered accountant, company secretary, or cost accountant can become a compliance officer or of an IA or RA. If professional entities becoming an IA compliance officer of IA and RA, then NISM certification is mandatory. That is a 3A for broking operation and 10A, 10B for investment advisory. For research, the NISM certification 15 is mandatory in addition to 3A. 3A is a standard variance that is being mentioned by the SEBI. In any category, they should have cleared the 3A certification. Client level segregation. This is one of the critical things that the IA and RA should adhere. Most things are common for both the licenses, that is the IA and RA. Only one difference is that I may mention in form of a note. With regard to the IA, individual IA are not permitted to do both the together. However, family of individual IA are not permitted to do distribution services of the client of an investment advisor, and client level segregation shall be adhered by non-individual IA at group level for investment advisory and distribution both the services. So at corporate or we may say non-individual level, and segregation between the two departments is possible and permitted if adequate level of segregation is being maintained. Separate infrastructure, separate human resource are being deployed, services are not being offered to the same customer. If it is being there, certain exemption are being followed. Say, take an example. In case of IA, institutional clients are not being under this restriction. It means that an institutional customer can avail IA service as well as the distribution service. And accredited investor are also being exempted under these particular restrictions. However, IA has to make sure that they take an standard waiver from the customer that they are being availing both these services and client do not have any kind of recourse to the authority in future under this regulation. Now, recently, as we mentioned, that there is a clarification in form of an FAQ by the SEBI on 23rd of July, wherein research analysts are exempted to have uh, delivery of both the services, that is, a distribution services as well as research service to the same customer if the distribution services is only for the mutual fund unit and research service is not for the mutual fund unit but only for the individual stock or equity share only. However, it is a question that why the regulator had not yet came up with similar clarification for the IA license. We are expecting similar should have been come very soon. It may come. Let's wait for some more time. Implementation of investment advisory services. It is being permitted that an investment advisory services may be implemented by the group level, that is the broking entity. However, there are certain protocols need to be added. One, that implementation should not be a mandatory requirement. That if you are availing my investment advisory, the broking should be taken up by the same group level entity only. One. Second thing is that no consideration for implementation. So the moment investment advisor is taking investment advisory fees from Mr. X, Mr. X can do the broking transaction at the group level. However, on that transaction, brokering charges is not permitted. So nil broking should be charged on that particular transaction. Third, such exemptions are there for mutual fund only direct scheme should be added. In case an advice is given for the mutual fund, they have to make sure that it is not being routed through ARN and ARN, that is the mutual fund distributor is getting a trail commission, but that particular transaction should be executed on the direct scheme of the respective mutual fund. Few other compliance are there. Earlier, there was a requirement to have a net worth by the IA and which was being abolished from 16th of December 2024. Part-time IA, it is possible. Only an individual or partnership firm can be an part-time investment advisor. However, there are some restriction is that number of clients of an part-time IA cannot exceed 75. Free trial is permitted, as we said that free trial is not permitted under IA regulation. However, it is being permitted under research regulation. There is a declaration need to be submitted to the authority on a half yearly basis for the SaaS services obtained by the IA. There is an annual internal audit need to be reported to the authority by 30th of September. An ATR need to be submitted by 31st October to the authority. And one more certification is that is a client level segregation, which need to be submitted to the authority by 30th of September. Till now, we have just understand that what all are the minimum mandatory compliance are there for the investment advisory license. Similarly, few more such compliance requirements are there with regard to the research license. However, I have just compiled only those requirements which are being in addition to what is being not there under the IA regulation. Let us glance through that particular compliance requirement. Yes, these are the very preliminary and critical requirement of principal officer and deposit. So it is being there that you need to have a principal officer. There are two basic parameters are there. Education, that the graduation should be there, and certification, that is the NISM certification series 15 should be there. Deposit requirement is also being there, similar on the line with what the IA has. There is no difference. With regard to the fees, yes, under the research license, the fixed mode of fees is being charged to the customer. The variable fees is not being permitted under the RA license. However, they have given an exemption with regard to the non-individual customer and accredited investor. So, in case your clientele are more non-individual, like partnership firm, LLP, corporates, then you may prefer to go with the research license where you have a freedom to charge an extra amount than the statutory limit of rupees 1,51,000. Family definition is on the same line like dependent spouse, dependent children, and dependent parents. Here, the advance fees is possible, but not exceeding 1 quarter. And in case of premature termination, the refund of proportionate fees of unexpired period should be done to the customer. Accredited investor, as we said, no restriction on the fees, and it is purely depend on the bilateral agreement between the both the parties. Record keeping are on the same line. However, just need to mention that it is this KYC related document need to be maintained only for the fees paying client. If a customer is a subscriber of the research service, however, is not a fee pay client, there is no need to maintain KYC, KRA or CKYC or agreement stuff. However, this record like research report issued, research recommendation, rationale for arriving at the research recommendation, record of public appearance, register of client in prescribed format, record of communication with the customer, most important terms and conditions of the research service. These all are the records are mandatory requirement and should be preserved for a period of 5 years. There are standard code of conduct as per third schedule of the SEBI regulation that need to be adhered by the RA. Honesty and good faith, diligence should be there in the dealing. There should not be any conflict of interest while giving any kind of recommendation. They are not being allowed to do insider trading or front running activity. The details, the securities for which they are conducting research or in process of issuing the research report, they have to make sure that they are being keeping those details highly confidential within the department itself. They are not even being permitted to share any detail even with the some other department of the same company or the group level also. Professional standards should be adhered. Compliance of the regulation and the guidelines should be adopted and followed. It is the responsibility of the senior management to make sure that the code of conduct is being adequately implemented by the research department. There are certain trading restrictions are there for RA to be adhered. That suppose that a particular research analysis is in the process of issuing a particular report on a particular security, say take an example X Limited. He has to make sure that he is not being dealing in the sense either buy position, sell position, any kind of position, dealing in those security backward 30 days, forward 5 days. I'll explain what is backward and forward. Today is 4th of September. So the research analysts are not being permitted to deal into the security where he is being doing the research for a period of 30 days from the date of that is the from 5th of August to 3rd of September, as well as up to the 9th of September. That is a 5 days forward. So they are not being permitted to trade during that cooling period of 35 days. 30 days backward, 5 days forward. Conflicted trades are never being permitted. In case a research analysis wanted to trade in that particular security, then they have to adhere to certain standard approval process that is being defined by the internal policy of the respective research entity. Few other compliances for the research. Similarly, net worth requirement is being abolished from 16th of December 2024. Part-time research is possible. Disclosure and content in research reports should be strictly as prescribed under the regulation 19 and 20. There are multiple research disclosures are there. Now, many times we understand that research are of two types, fundamental research and technical research. Definitely for the fundamental research, the rigorous activity exercise being performed by the people and documents are there to be compiled and retained and comment could be compiled in form of in that report and certain disclosures would be there. Even for the technical research, there is a specific FAQ is there. SEBI had said even for the call recommendation, technical research report also, all the disclosure norms should be adhered and that facts should be mentioned while issuing those technical recommendation or the reports. In case it is not feasible to compile all that fact in that particular message or communication, a link should be followed in that particular message, and that link should be there on the website or the mobile application, and where all the facts are being disclosed. Few other compliance like SAS declaration submission and annual internal audit on the same line what the IA is supposed to do. Similarly, client level segregation certification is also there, which is to be submitted by 30th of September. Few compliance norms with regard to the PMS, Portfolio Manager Services. For the principal officer, there are three criteria: education, that is a PG, that is a post graduation or professional degree should be there, like chartered accountant, company secretary, chartered financial analyst. Second is the certification, that NISM certification should be there. Third and most important is the experience. Experience in portfolio management, dealing in security of 5 years should be there by the principal officer. In addition to the principal officer, there is one more requirement, that you need to have one more employee who will be assisting either the principal officer or the fund manager, and that person should be graduate and he should have at least experience of 2 years dealing in the security or into the portfolio management. This net worth is one of the critical requirements under the PMS license. They should have a net worth of 5 crores or more before they put an application to the authority, and they have to make sure that principal officer and net worth, both the eligibility criteria is being fulfilled at all point of time during the holding PMS license. This rule is applicable for all the license, even for IA and RA, that at all point of time, basic eligibility criteria should be followed, because we are getting many questions on the principal officer or the deposit, whether the deposit should be submitted even if the business is not there. My question is yes, the deposit should be there even though business is not there. Principal officer should be there or not? Yes, the principal officer should be there even though business is not there, because you are holding a license and it is the preliminary and basic requirement of the SEBI regulation, and that is, it is the mandatory requirement. Few more compliance under the PMS license. 4 critical audit and certifications are there. One is an annual compliance internal audit under the PMS regulation. Second is the firm level certification, TWRR methodology to be adopted while conducting that certification. Third is the certification of the disclosure document. Now, this disclosure document, it is a kind of an constitution of the PMS. It is a kind of an one of the critical document for the PMS. Hence, this document would be updated periodically. However, as and when there is a material change, the certification should be done. And in our opinion, as on an annual basis, certain facts would be amended in the disclosure document. So it is advisable to have a certification of the DD on an annual basis. Fourth such requirement is that the client performance certification. The customer to whom the portfolio is being managed, they need to know what is their opening balance, what is their closing balance, what is their realized gain, unrealized gain, holding position, cash position, transaction. All these facts are compiled together and submitted in form of a client performance report, and that would be certified by the chartered accountant at the end of the year, and that would be a base document while submitting an income tax return for those customers. So these are the critical compliance requirement with regard to the PMS license. Now we have understood some basic compliance requirement of all three licenses, that is the investment advisory, research analysis, and portfolio management. Now, as a broker or a DP, what would be the ideal license that you can opt for? For that, we have just compiled this screen just to understand, okay, what is the scenario. Based on that, what would be an ideal license that you may take. However, it is always being possible that some other option would be a better one. But we have to compile all facts together, and then we have to take an informed and concrete decision. Let us glance it. Say, take an example that we know that my client size never going to increase more than 50 lakh rupees. Then we have to make sure that PMS is out of reach. It is always prefer either we can go for an investment advisory or a research license. Take an example, second scenario, looking for variable or higher fees from the customer. Then research would be a restriction because variable fees concept is not there. And if the value of the advisory asset under advisory is increasing, higher fees could be possible under the investment advisory model. So it is preferred that IA should be taken as against the research license. Third scenario, company has a mutual fund distribution. Suppose that company is into mutual fund distribution, ARN holder, and want to start with the activity where they can give stock recommendation, model portfolio would be could also be permitted. In that case, IA would be preferred as against IA because recent clarification had given for RA to have a common customer for the distribution as well as research services. However, that exemption is not being there for the investment advisory. So it is better to have a RA license. Uh, Suppose your company is having good fund management capability, having good high net worth clients are there, that PMS would be a ideal license because there is no fees restriction, good value business is there, and growth prospect is much higher as compared to IA and RA. Another such scenario is that limited budget on new wealth management vertical. We know that there are about 5 to 6 wealth management verticals are there. Research, investment advisory, portfolio management, AIF, mutual fund, CIS. Now, broker want to start, but not very sure to start with which activity. So the least compliance license is the research analysis license, where the limited number of compliance are there, limited number of record keeping are there. Let us start with one vertical first. Let us understand tail or tail ki dhar dekho, then may go for a few additional license at a later date. Sixth such scenario is that nature of client. If non-individual, you can prefer research as against IA because under RA, non-individual customer are permitted where the higher amount of fees can also be taken. So now if you can see under scenario 2 and 6, I had given two different recommendations. Want to go for a higher fees, IA is there, but your nature of client are non-individual ज़्यादा है, so you may prefer to go for the research license because liberty is there. Looking for limited compliance, research is always better. I am through with my presentation. Over to you, Arjun bhai, Sheetal ma'am.
So, thank you so much, Shardul bhai. That was a very comprehensive and a nice overview that we got, and very good comparative analysis between the three verticals. So, yes, it does give clarity as to where the broker should go and which is the right way to go about it, initially. We got a few questions, I'll run them by you. But first, I want to, I'll ask my question first. That if a client is calling me in the morning and says, "Bazaar kya lagta hai? क्या लेना चाहिए आज आप बताओ दिवाली is coming up मुहूर्त में क्या सोचा क्या क्या खरीदे can I do that?"
Sir, if this question was asked before 15th of December 2024, so broker are permitted to give any kind of call recommendation, buy, sell, hold, any kind of thing. Even they can give a good recommendation also. They just need to either do the chapter 3 guidelines of the regulation. No need to go for the registration. However, recently after the amendment in the regulation from 16th of December 2024, they have amended the definition of the research report wherein under the sub regulation WA they have amended call recommendation buy sell or hold. So if a customer is asking you कि क्या लेना है तो broker is giving a recommendation, so that point of time the broker should have a research license. So it is one of the mandatory requirement that broker should adhere.
Okay, so even if I'm giving this in a closed circuit, as in it's just 1:1 between me and my client, I'm not broadcasting it. Even then, I would need to take a RA.
Sir, if you are being circulating among your existing customer through a password protected message or communication. Earlier, it was being permitted under even IA regulation also and RA also. But after this amendment into the definition, they are very clear that they want to come back all the people to come into the net of research.
Okay.
So that is why, because they want to check whether there is some trading protocol is being followed or not, and that is the reason why they have come up with some additional controls.
So then anyone telling even their own registered clients only will all basically fall under the RA then.
Yes, it is
Understood.
being it requires.
Okay, okay. So, okay, a few questions we got from other brokers is, are APs or dealers of a stockbroker required to pass the research analyst certification, the NISM one, if the stockbroker is already an RA?
Sir, with regard to the research entity, if a corporate level, a broker has a research license, and the person who is issuing research report, who is signing the research report, they should clear NISM certification.
Okay.
Other than that, none of the person, they would basically mention in the FAQ, support staff, back office staff, client onboarding staff, compliance people, they are not supposed to any such qualification. Only the people who are conducting research, who are issuing the research report, has to clear that NISM 50.
Got it. Okay. You've already
Same is
answered.
the case with the IA also. If a person who is dealing with the customer during the course of giving an investment advice, they has to clear NISM certification. If they are not interacting with the customer, they are not involved into the process of giving an investment advice, they are not supposed to clear the NISM.
Okay. So this question you've already answered. I'll just repeat it. It's been asked that as a research entity, even if there is no business happening, uh, there are no clients. Do we still need to maintain the deposits?
Yes, as of now, what we verbally discussed with the regulator also. So, SEBI and exchange is very clear. Okay, you are holding the license, you are a registered entity, and maintaining the deposit and having a principal officer are the critical eligibility criteria to be a research analyst or to be an investment advisor. So, if you are not holding that eligibility criteria, you are no more. You are not allowed to hold that license itself, and that is, in our opinion, it is required to maintain the same deposit as well as principal office.
How about IR? Do we need to submit an IR if we have no clients as an RA?
Here, yes, here it is always better to take a clarification from the exchange or the SEBI in writing. In our opinion, yes, no such need to go for an internal audit, because there is no transactions, no
Right.
client are being onboarded, no research report are being issued, no investment advice is being given. If nothing is there, what we will do? What we will conduct as an auditor? So it
Correct.
is always better such category may be exempted, but it is always better to take it in writing from the exchange and the SEBI.
And in the case of RA, the exchange would be BSA?
Sir, for both, as of now, BSC Limited is then authorization authority to whom this power is being delegated by the SEBI.
Okay. All right. So also similarly, just as a deposit is there, same way a PO, a principal officer, even that will be a part of the critical eligibility criteria for an RA.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
because PO and deposit are two critical criteria. PO is the first step, and deposit at the time of in principle approval. So both are two critical stuff. Yes,
Okay.
if exchange is giving some waiver or exemption, it would be a welcome step for the people who are not yet active.
You're right. Right. Uh, what are the steps and compliance requirements for an existing stockbroker to become a SEBI registered IA?
SEBI register IA.
Yeah.
See, first they have to have a separate unit, and you need to deploy human resource for that. So minimum one person should be there who would be heading that IA division, that is the investment advisory division. That person should be possessing that two basic criteria. One is the education. Second is the certification, that is the NISM certification. If two basic things are being there, then they have to put an application to the authority, that is a BSc Limited, on a prescribed format. Once the BSc in principle approved, the application will move to the SEBI, and SEBI further scrutinize the same. And on clearance of SEBI, you have to submit that deposit or mutual fund unit to the authority to start with the operation.
Okay. All right. So can okay, whether a PMS fund manager has to restrict business to parent self-broking firm up to a certain percentage?
Yes, in January 2020, there is an amendment into the SEBI regulation under the PMS regulation, wherein there are restrictions on the services availed from the associate or the group company of 20%. Take an example, broking. Suppose that X Limited is a broker as well as a portfolio manager. Then X Limited PMS can avail the service of the broking, but they have to make sure that the not more than 20% of their broking expenses for the PMS division is being given to the associate entity for the broking services.
Okay.
So
So
in
they
case
need
that
to
in
distribute it.
PMS is paying 1 crore as a brokerage to multiple brokers, so they have to make sure that their associate or group company is not taking more than 20 lakhs from the PMS division.
Got it. Got it.
Same is the case for the custody and demat service also. So
Okay.
in that case, it is always advisable that either you charge the customer zero fees so that they can have an in-house DP service and in-house custody service, but they will lose with regard to the charges.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay, so I'll ask you some cross vertical questions. That can a broker have advisory and broking together?
Yes, advisory and broking together is possible. There are one trick is that you have to keep it that into mind. If a customer can avail both the services, broking as well as advisory, they have to make sure that the transaction for which advisory division had given that investment advice, that transaction should not be executed on the broking platform. One, if executing, then broker has to make sure that these transactions are being flag marked and brokerage is being charged at zero rate, so that restriction on the IA regulation is being fulfilled.
Okay. How about a broker doing distribution advisory?
Distribution advisory, yes, it is also permitted. No issue there, no issue with regard to that. But they have to maintain the client level segregation. And as of now, IA clarity is not there with regard to the mutual fund unit and direct equity. So as of now, suppose that advancement advisory is for the direct equity and stock,
Hmm.
and distribution is for the mutual fund units. Both are two different things.
Yeah.
So under RA, that exemption is there. So the entity can do both the thing together. But IA clarity is not there. We expect that regulate it might be some typing or might be ignored, but very soon we expect that clarity should be there from the regulator.
Understood. And how about this together? So we spoke about advisory and distribution. How about broking and research or distribution and research?
Sorry, broking and
Broking and research,
broking
right?
and research,
So
it is
that
quite
is PMS
possible,
advisory.
permitted, no issue in that.
Okay.
But there are certain segregation level need to be maintained so that client register should be maintained and make sure that both the things have a separate infrastructure.
Okay. So would the same thing apply for research I and IA? If it's under the same company or a group company, again the same segregation requirements are there?
Yes, there are many live cases are there where the entity X Limited is holding broking, DP license, research license, investment advisory license, PMS license. It is permitted, no issue in that. You have to make sure that each license is having a separately identifiable unit, having a separate office infrastructure. Ideally, it should be at separate office. If within the same premises, you have to make sure that that unit is being separate and being biologically isolated from the other units.
Okay.
So
Got it.
the research people should be able to access to the research report or through that particular biometric and a few other logical and physical access control system.
Okay. Any additional infra human resources that we need?
Sorry,
Any additional infra human resources that a broker would
Sir,
need?
as of now, because you are already a broker and DP, a common compliance officer is possible. Common admin, HR, client onboarding, back office work is possible. For IA, investment advisor is needed a separate people. For research, the research analysis needed a separate people. For
Okay.
PMS, two additional staff, that is a fund manager and one additional employee. Other than that, other team members could be possible are being part of the common department. With regard to the PMS, there are some additional restrictions are there so that you need to have a operation team, you need to have a dealing team to be isolated from the other team, so that you need to have a separate dealing desk. There are certain dealing desk protocols are there. Biological access should be there. Mobile should not be permitted under that zone. Even certain website is not being permitted. Even the access to the website should not be there. Many other things are being there, but it is under the PMS license.
Understood. So yes, I think we have run through our questions, the ones that I had. Sheetal, any questions from your end from the live YouTube?
Yeah, there are many. So I'll read out and Shardul ji can answer. So PMS, most of them charge upfront fees. Are you sure advance fees under PMS is not allowed?
Under the recent amendment under the FAQ, the PMS are not being allowed to charge upfront fees. If some existing players are charging, they are not charging in the name of fund management or the PMS services. It would be under some other name.
Okay. What compliance requirements must we adhere to for media appearances?
There are certain protocols are there under the research regulation. One thing is that what all the fact need to be disclosed, like what a particular, suppose you are going to recommend on X Limited, whatever your position is there, either long, short, any such position would be there, that need to be disclosed while that media thing is being live on a particular session. At the same time, the record of that media presentation should be preserved for a period of 5 years.
Okay.
Either it is audio or visual.
Okay. How an IA can advise without doing research?
Is not possible. See, investment advisor have to advise customer based on suitability, and to determine suitability, they need to do risk profiling of the customer, and risk profiling of the customer would be done, and then investment advisor will identify whether a particular advice is suiting to a customer or not. And before identifying or shortlisting what all the script need to be suggested to a customer, they had to perform research. Either it would be a fundamental research or it could be a technical chart analysis. See,
Okay.
research कौन सा करो वो certain नहीं है कि आपको fundamental करना ही चाहिए, ऐसा जरूर नहीं है. You can do technical research, but
Correct.
without research, if you are advising, it means you don't have any base. If you
Correct.
are not having any rational, अब rational को आपको लिखना पड़ेगा writing में. How you can do an advice? आप X Limited buy कर लो, but what is the base? Why you are saying? You feel like that कि X Limited is good company, so you are just telling your customer to do that. That is absolutely negligence and violation of the standard
Violation.
code of conduct,
Correct.
because the diligence is not being adhered, because the basic professional standard is not being maintained.
Correct. Could you please
Investment
throw?
advisor doesn't mean that investment advisor is there, so they cannot perform the research. Research is always going to be there. Based on that, only the investment advisory would be an outcome of the research.
Research. Correct.
Sheetal, can I please come in? I have a question,
Yes,
I
please.
wanted to ask.
Yes,
Can a
sir.
director or a promoter of a company, which is a stockbroking entity, also have SEBI registration for RA, take position in the recommended stocks with the disclosures?
Can you please repeat the question, sir?
So, can a director or promoter of a stockbroking entity, which is also having RA license, can those directors or promoters take positions in the recommended stocks with the appropriate disclosures?
Yes, it is permitted, but they have to make sure that they are not doing that in that cooling period of 35 days.
So 35 days
30
before,
days backward, 5 days forward from the date of
correct.
publication.
So within that tenure, they cannot take a fresh position.
Yes.
Understood. Okay.
They may have a existing position prior to that 30 days,
Yeah.
and they have to mention that fact into that research report itself.
Understood. Okay.
It
Thank
is
you.
permitted.
Okay. Thanks. Go ahead, Sridhar, please.
If a research analyst is also a stockbroker and provides trading or algo trade recommendation, is it permissible for the broker to take a position against the trading call, particularly in context of proprietary or arbitrage trading?
See, contract trade is in literal interpretation not permitted. Now, this is an peculiar nature where the technical difficulty would be there because the technical calls would be given based on certain research and recommendation, and algo trading would be done based on certain predefined parameters. So, algo trade may hit or may not hit, but these people are doing the activity, the technical calls, manual activity, and algo trail is being done through automated through predefined parameter. So it is possible that certain transactions where the trading calls are there where they have to say that the buy position, and in algo the sale transaction is being happen. Am I right, madam?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
So this is possible. For each such exceptional case, a justification should be recorded into the record, and a compliance should be routed, and a fact should be minuted in the record. So that later date, if regulator come for an inspection, they have a correct fact, and formal approval process is being adopted for
Of
such exceptional case.
okay,
But this should not be a routine course.
course, correct. Next question is, what about stock positions by company where RA registration is taken in the name of company? However, the RA is an employee having NISM. Can the company take positions or its directors can take positions?
There is a concept of designated person. So, company director, research head are termed as designated person. So, all the trading restrictions and protocols should be adhered by all these people.
Okay. Can we circulate our report to any unknown freely?
Research report is for the circulation and publication and for
Publication.
broadcast purpose. It is being hosted on the website. It could be broadcast on WhatsApp or any other mode of communication. So
Correct.
the day when it is being published, then it could be given to anyone. There is no
Anyone.
restriction.
Okay.
But disclaimer and disclosure as per the
Are
SEBI
mandatory.
guidelines should be incorporated before publishing the same.
Same. Correct. Next question is, as a mutual fund distributor, can I register as a RA also at the same time? I have NISM series 15.
Yes,
He can, right?
yes. But you need to have a segregation between the both the departments.
Both the departments. Correct. What is the meaning of regulatory sandbox? Is it different from free trial?
And regulatory sandbox is an option given by the regulator. It
Mhm.
is given to startups and the fintech who want to try something different, and for that purpose, do not want to deploy huge burden of cost of compliance and technology. So some waiver is being given by the regulator that certain regulation of the SEBI is not applicable to them for a period, might be 12 months or so. During that period, that entity will do testing and understand okay, whether this product is viable, this service is viable, it is workable. If it is workable, and before launching the commercial, that waiver will be withdrawn by the SEBI and they will become a normal RE.
Okay. Can you shed some light on investment advisory agreement that needs to be circulated while we are onboarding a new client?
Investment advisory agreement is an agreement between the investment advisor and the investor, and it has enumerated certain terms and conditions under which both the parties are being agreed to. There are certain standard structures and prescribed guidelines is being mentioned into the regulation. We'll share that along with my PPT so that you can share with the members.
Members, correct. If the firm is SEBI registered stockbroker and took license of RA, then what are the trading restrictions for the directors? And also note that principal officer, not director, appointed separately for RA.
See, as earlier said, the principal officer is head of a research unit.
Research.
And there are two designated director for the broking unit. So all these three people would be termed as designated people because they are in excess of certain facts, and trading restriction would be there for them as per the SEBI RA regulation.
Okay. Is a research analyst permitted to conduct one-to-one meetings with client of broking division to explain research view, outlook, or investment advice? Client specific discussion on research needs via, sorry. Yeah, the question is again, I'm repeating it. Is a research analyst permitted to conduct one-to-one meetings with client of broking division to explain research view, outlook, or investment advice?
The first thing is that we need to understand that there are two different licenses are there. One is the research license, second is the investment advisory license. In the given question, you can connect to the customer of the broking division. You can explain them about the prospect of the particular research that is being performed by them, what is being there mentioned into the research report. However, that should not be in terms of an investment advice. They are not being pursuing customer that you go with this particular model portfolio and other thing. So, in my opinion, certain restrictions should be kept with regard to the investment advice to be given to that customer. You can definitely give them service of subscription of the research report, but not the investment advice, because this is not an investment advice license. This is an RA license.
RA license. If a client approaches an RA through the broking division with fundamental research requirements, can a RA provide the required research views or recommendation to the client?
Yes, but followed one protocol that customer is availing the mutual fund unit distribution services, normal broking services, and for research, he is only availing research on direct equity or the stock, not on the mutual fund unit.
Mutual fund units.
If that segregation and that protocol is being added, uh, company can provide both the services together to the same client, that is the distribution as well as research as well as the broking.
Okay. If a client shares their holding statement through the broking division and seeks research analyst views on the securities held, can a RA provide inputs, advice?
This is called service of review of the portfolio. Earlier, it was not being permitted because research are being barred to comment on the model portfolio or the weightages. However, based on the current guidelines, it may be permitted.
Okay.
But it is advisable to take and written consent from the exchange before proceeding or providing these services. Because still I am of the view that it is an IA kind of services, and investment advisory license should be there. Because here the risk profiling is not being done by the research analysis. And without doing the risk profiling, to give an advice to a customer is not right an approach.
Correct. Can a research analyst recommend specific shares for long-term investment based on clients' available investable funds, or must such recommendation be made only through published research report and not tailored to an individual?
I guess what the question is that either they want to issue a research report in form of a publication of research report, or they just want to circulate among the close group of client only. Am I right?
Yes. Uh,
When a person is issuing a research report, ideally it should be done at par. You cannot have an bias to a particular group of people that initially I will give it to 10
Shardul ji,
people.
sorry to interrupt. It is for specific client capital.
Specific
Client capital.
specific client category, no. Then it would be an bias and preference given to a particular group of people. So that
Huh.
would be an unfair to the other customer.
Okay. If broker employees request portfolio review and investment recommendations for onward sharing with their clients, can the research analyst provide such inputs?
This was a question just prior to two question only. That in my opinion, this is the role of investment advisor, not a research analyst.
Research analyst. Can a RA provide past performance data to clients and also expected future returns? And if so, what should be
No,
benchmarking criteria to be used for such performance report?
no, madam, not permitted.
Strictly
Only
not allowed.
portfolio managers are permitted.
Are permitted. SEBI has clarified that the rationale for research recommendation should be maintained by RA. How and what type of rationale should be maintained for technical recommendation, as they are mostly intraday and based on alerts? Charts.
See, technical research or a call or recommendation is being given. So during the course of that chartered technical analysis study, they must study that what is the reason why they are being thinking that particular stock is moving upward or downward. So based on that, what you are being understanding that movement, you have to stick that chart into that ration. Along with that, what is their movement, and based on that, that fact need to be mentioned and minuted. It could be a one line or one paragraph. That is, there is no such need that you need to have a ration for 2-3 pages. Even a paragraph is more than sufficient to be justified your reason of giving a buy or sell recommendation.
Okay. Last question. Can an authorized person of a broker become a IA or RA and provide both advisory services and execution services, that is, purchase and sale of equity shares to same set of clients, or should they do it through different entities?
It is permitted.
It is permitted.
Madam, we said na, that implementation or execution of broking is permitted of that investment advice. You have to make sure that you are not charging any brokerage on that transaction.
Correct.
You have to flag mark that transaction, and on that transaction, zero brokerage should be there.
Should be there. Okay. Can any auditor sign client level segregation compliance certificate for non-individual RA, or only statutory auditor can sign, as SEBI issues amended circular for IA, however, no circular for RA?
It is permitted.
It is, right? I think we are done with many
Well,
sets of questions. Yeah.
thank you, Shardul, for putting up with so many questions of ours. It was a slightly longish, session.
Question.
But, I think there are just so many questions that, even I'm getting on my WhatsApp that, what about this, what about that? There is a lot more here. But thank you for at least opening the book on the subject. So it was very insightful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the time and efforts you put in for this. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, sir. And you can just send me that questions. I will just respond to them.
And
Sure.
Shardulji, if our broker members if they have any queries related to circular on the compliance side, operational side. So we will take up, we'll ask them to email it to us, and then probably we'll forward it to you and
Sure,
see,
madam.
right? Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you,
Thank you.
Shardul ji. Thank you, members, for attending today's webinar. Thank you, Arjun sir. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
madam.
Thank you all.
Thank you.